My name's Christine Wright and I'm an adult nurse lecturer here at Canterbury Christchurch University. Amongst the pictures behind me is the only known photograph of my relative, able seaman William Dowsey Magog, who was unfortunate enough to be involved in the drill shed bombing. He did not die on the day of the bombing, but survived for 2 days where they were able to send him home to Sunderland. Unfortunately, he did pass away from his injuries there. The dying and injured from the bombing would have been taken to the Royal Naval Hospital in Gillingham, which is now the site of the Medway Maritime Hospital. There they would have been looked after and cared for by a variety of healthcare professionals, one of which would have been the VAD, Voluntary Aid Detachment nurses, of which I am dressed in the uniform today. The role of the VADs in the hospital would be to tend to the men's wounds, to look after them generally and to assist the surgeons and doctors on their rounds.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm a senior lecturer in occupational therapy at Canterbury Christchurch University. Once the sailors have been treated by the surgeons and the doctors, they would come through to the reconstruction aides, who were the VADs and dressed as VADs, and these were the early occupational therapists. The role of the reconstruction aides were to help the sailors recover from their injuries and get back into service again.
Hello, my name's Mark Gradwell and I'm a senior lecturer in radiography here at Canterbury Christchurch University at the Medway campus. We know that many of the casualties from the bombing raid would have had X-ray investigation as part of their treatment. We know that there was an X-ray room in the Naval Hospital of Chatham because we've seen the plans that show where the room was. What was important about radiography at the time was that it enabled surgeons and doctors to be able to localise not just fractures, but also to be able to identify shrapnel, which would have been the injuries that a lot of those survivors from the bombing raid would have suffered. Although it looks very different to the equipment that we use these days, the principles are very much the same, with an X-ray tube, an ability to be able to focus the X-ray beam, and indeed the X-ray cassette to be able to produce the image on there. The type of uniform that the radiographers would have been wearing is very similar to the uniform I'm wearing now, and this can be seen on this image here, which is an image taken from a First World War hospital.
The sailors that would have been injured in the bombing of the drill shed in 1917 would have sustained injuries mainly from the glass roof which collapsed onto them. That would have meant that they needed surgical interventions. Now in 1917, the surgical options that were available were far more limited than they are now. The beginnings of the operating theatres and surgical techniques really started around this time and around World War I. And some of the techniques and some of the instruments that we've got are still very similar and can trace their origins back to this time. Groups of instruments like clamps, retractors, swabs, even a mallet hasn't changed. If we look at some of the instruments that we've got on this picture, you can see here we've got knives. Now at that time the knives were essentially just like a butcher's knife. We didn't have scalpels at that time, they hadn't been invented. So here we've just got a few knives which are standard design and standard shape, which would be used pretty much for everything.
In 1917, surgery and anaesthetics were on a cusp really. This was post-Lister and the dawn of antiseptic practice, but pre-penicillin and antibiotic treatments. What this meant for the people of the time was that they had to narrow their expectations compared to today. We expect our anaesthetic to keep us comfortable and not even feel sick. Then the anaesthetist hoped that you would live through the procedure. Now we expect our surgery to give us a good result, the best possible. Then our surgeons were making difficult decisions to ensure we stayed alive.
Hello, my name is Paul Elliott. I'm a senior lecturer with the Institute of Medical Sciences, specifically attached to the Physician Associate Studies programme here at the Medway campus. What I'm going to talk to you about briefly is these two. Injuries sustained from the bombing of the drill hall in 1917, of which there would be a range of injuries from minor flesh wounds to major amputations, this sort of thing. So certainly we'd have had shrapnel wounds from the bomb metal itself. We'd have had glass wounds because the roof of the drill hall at that time was glass, and therefore it was shattered and spread multiple shards of glass around. There would have been trauma to all parts of the body. There would have been fractures of the bones, certainly, and these would have been both open and closed fractures. There would have been a range of soft tissue injuries, and of course there would be internal organ damage. All of the casualties would have suffered from severe shock. Even if they were not injured by the damage, they would have been in shock. The other thing I want to talk to you about is the treatment categorisation that the military has. There are 4 of these, as you can see. First one is immediate surgery required, cannot wait, must go straight to theatre. For example, things like major shrapnel wounds to the body, amputations, that sort of thing. T2 would have been surgeries required, but not necessarily immediately, and therefore could wait up to a period of 1 hour. T3 would be walking wounded. These are people who have injuries, but can wait for a period of up to 4 hours. The final category is T4, which is those individuals who are clearly not going to survive, have no hope of life, so you would simply give them analgesics and comfort and allow them to pass away in a dignified manner.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Law and I'm the Dean of Chapel at Canterbury Christ Church University. Events such as the drill shed bombing and the extraordinary suffering of the First World War changed the way in which chaplains thought about religion, the way they thought about God. It wasn't easy to be as certain anymore. The notion of a God who was distant and aloof, who knew about things but didn't actually participate in them, became untenable. And one of the contributions of chaplains to the way we think about God today is a God who suffers himself. A God who's not a distant onlooker, but one who participates, sympathises, and feels what people are going through.
Hi, my name's David Stroud and I'm the Senior Chaplain to Canterbury Christ Church University. The roles of chaplain and the Royal Navy have always gone hand in hand, and on that fateful night the role of the chaplain was very similar to that which we see today, being there to support staff and recruits. On that night the role would have been to fill in the gaps where there was a need, to help people, to look after people, the holistic welfare of all involved, whether that meant running round and looking after people or being at bedsides and praying for those who are in need. It would all have come down to the role of the chaplain.